All right, looks like we are live. So, hello everyone, and welcome to the Good Old Gamer. Hope everybody's having a great Saturday. Hope you have a great weekend planned. I've been a little sick over the past few days, so I might have to cut this a little short. It's a little difficult to talk, but I did want to get this one out. It's been a little while since we've done a live stream. Saturdays will become the new home for the weekly live stream. I did mention that a few weeks ago. My wife and I will be starting to do our podcast on Fridays. So we're going to record those on Fridays. So the live streams will officially be on Saturday from now on. I kind of like doing them here in the morning. This might be the time we'll kind of play with it and see how that works out. But if you guys can let me know, if you can see me, if you can hear me, if this time works well for you, I want to see how many people we get in here, things like that, and we'll adjust and kind of figure it out as we go. But yeah, so hopefully everybody's doing pretty good. It's been kind of a light, I guess you could say, past few weeks because we haven't done a solo live stream in quite a while. Not a whole lot going on out there. And in reality, I think that's okay. I think most people are pretty okay with uh, kind of a more chill period. We've had, what was it, the past year or so, we've had launches of graphics cards and CPUs and a bunch of stuff that's come out. And the dust has kind of settled now. And I think most people are pretty happy with their purchases or kind of know what they want to get, which is kind of why this new rumor of a super lineup for RTX 40 series I find a little bit interesting. It's like, well, who's this for? Because as I just mentioned, I would imagine everybody is probably pretty settled with what they have and where they're at with everything. Let's see, good audio, video, going against college football, though. Okay, well, I'm not gonna lie. Anybody who chooses football over tech, they're dead to me. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people like football. I have no interest in sports. Not watching them anyway. If I want to go play football, I'll go outside and call some people and play. But that's me. So, but yeah, that's a good thought there. But Saturdays is kind of the only day that I could do it. So, Saturday, it has to be Saturday, just depending on the time. So earlier in the day probably would be better because most of the games I would imagine are probably a little later. But all right, cool deal. So since you guys can see and hear me, we can get on into it. Lowell college football. Hey, some people are into it. It's not my cup of tea. I used to be big into Major League Baseball, but that's back when I was playing baseball, like in high school, and even a little after high school, I was still into it because I was thinking maybe trying to make a run at it, but I used it more as a tool, like a learning tool to help me, less of a entertainment device. I never saw it so much as entertainment, um, more so, like I said, a learning tool. But hey, to each their own, right? Different strokes, different folks. Football is watching sweaty men chasing a ball and each other jumping in a big pile together. Yeah, well, I mean that's all sports is. I mean, the other way you could look at it, it's a bunch of grown men or women playing a kids game for a lot of money. But hey, man, if you can monetize a kids game like that, why wouldn't you, right? I mean, it's the same thing with esports. You're monetizing kids games. Mats, thank you so much for the 50 sec. He said, have a great weekend. Thanks, buddy. I'm planning on it. I have to finish insulating my chicken coop because it's getting cold out there. I think that's how I got sick. I was insulating it the other day, putting up boards and stuff, putting in a heat lamp, and our the water line burst down the road. So I couldn't take a shower afterwards. So basically, I was covered in chicken shit all day. And I'm like, pretty sure that's why I got sick. Of course, that happened like while I'm cleaning this whole thing out. I was like, that is awesome. But yeah, so good rule of thumb, make sure you have running water. But I guess technically I did when I got started. So there was no avoiding that one. And then I also want to let you guys know Pony, he had the pre-stream compete. So I mentioned this a while ago. For all the competitors on the channel, you will be posted up in the corner. This is going to be a new thing moving forward every month. Each month, all the competitors will be known throughout the stream. So that's another nice little bonus. So everybody knows who can compete and who is always right. So we can't argue with Pony. He's obviously correct. And he got lucky. He got himself a God bin 14900K. So nobody's competing with him anyway. So yeah, there we go. Yeah, let's get into some of the stories here. Let me pull up our good old friend. Let me zoom out a little bit here. Zoom out. Thing. There you go. Wait. All right. So our good friend Video Cards, and we can see what all the hubbub's about, and it's all about the RTX 40 Super. This is all anybody's talking about. Even Celso did a video on this. I found that a little weird. Not his normal cup of tea here lately. He's talking more about graphics and futuristic sort of stuff, and I kind of like that better, to be perfectly honest, at this point. But he did a video on this yesterday, and it's just so funny how wrong most people are on this. We're going to do the math right here live, you and I, and I'll show you exactly how underwhelming this whole thing really is. So anyways, pretty much everything's been confirmed by now because we're getting different information from everywhere. There's going to be 3 SKUs. The one part I disagree with is the naming. The 4070 Ti Super sounds stupid. Nvidia is a smart company. It seems unlikely they would go that route, but they may just not care. They could be like, we don't need to sound cool anymore. People are going to buy our stuff anyway. It's not this one where they have the specs lined up. Let me find it. They have one where they have like a chart. It was in the past couple of days that they did it. Is this one, the special address? This is really the big reason why people are talking about it. Seems most likely because NVIDIA is talking about a GeForce special address at CES. You know, it would either be like a new high-end graphics card, like a 4080 Ti, or something like a Super Series. Yeah, so here it is. Here's the chart. So this is pretty cool. This is basically the aggregated data that we have thus far. So this isn't going to be an AD102. That's not going to be a thing. Unless they have some really bad ones with bad memory controllers, then maybe. I don't see why they wouldn't just do that up here. But anyways, you're going to have an AD103, AD103, and then this will be the AD104. And we talked about this on Techonomics the other day, and the reason why this is most likely happening is because the laptops, the higher-end laptops, which use AD103 as their top of the line, they don't use 102s. And then the AD104s will be kind of like one set above that. Apparently, according to Paul's people, his retail guys, they're not moving. They're moving very, very slow, like 10 units or less since launch. So they're just not selling. And this would be the easiest way to kind of reallocate, you know, all of those GPUs that are not selling in laptop that you thought that were, just move them on over to the desktop side and get rid of them. So that makes a lot of sense. Denver, thank you so much for the 22 months of support, buddy. Man, 22 months. It's crazy. I sometimes forget how long I've been doing this. He said, in my opinion, I said a few months ago, the market for AI cards seemed to begun to be slowing, so NVIDIA is going to have to come running back to gamers. This isn't that. These cards aren't powerful enough for AI. The 103s on down. They're just not. So these would never be used for AI anyway. So these are actually non-AI capable cards. More than likely, it's just laptops not selling, and they need to they need to sell them off before the 50 series comes out. So sell them to PC gamers; they'll buy it. So, anyways, let's pull up our calculator here. So a lot of people are coming out with numbers as to how performant these will be over their previous counterparts. I'm going to do the math for you guys, and I'll be within 2%. I'm going to be 100% accurate within 2%. I'll show you how this is done. So you take the 4070. This is going to be the biggest jump, obviously. Percentage-wise, you can just see it. Simple math. But you take 7168 divided by 5888. Okay, so you got 21.7. So we'll just round up 22%. So then you take 22, and then you divide by 2. This is going to be around 11% faster. It's that simple. Because you don't get very good scaling on shader cores. It's actually really, really poor scaling. So dividing in half will get you within, like I said, about 2%. So best case scenario, 13%. Worst case scenario, 9%. Single digit percentage. And that's the best one. So it's a little faster, but it's not even a half a generation faster. It's just like a little faster. So then if we look at like the 4070 Ti Super, 8448 divided by 7680. All right, you got 10. 10% divided by 2, you're looking at 5. Best case scenario, 7. Okay, so margin of error. And then this one's the worst, of course. 10 to 40 divided by 97 to 8. 5% divided by 2 equals irrelevant. So it's going to be insignificantly faster. So why even come out with these? Once again, the only reason that makes any logical sense is for these graphics cards to basically just be sold, meaning they're not selling elsewhere. They have to be sold. They have to clear out their inventory. That's the only reason to do this. And it also indicates that we will get a price drop, since you're not really going to get a performance increase. Even 10% isn't even worth talking about. So it's the same performance, or roughly the same performance. And they can't charge. I mean, they could try to charge the same amount of money, but if you're trying to move units, that doesn't make sense. So most likely, and we've been talking about this since the launch, the 4080 needs to be $1,000, and then it'll sell. So the 4080 Super, likely $1,000. The 4070 Ti Super, my guess will probably drop about $100. So from $799 to $699. And then you'll which actually will look pretty good for a 16 gig card from NVIDIA. So a lot of people will like this at $699. Even though it's basically the same performance of what you got, it'll be $100 cheaper plus 4 more gigs of VRAM. That like 3 or 4% faster, nobody's going to give a crap about. 16 gigs of RAM, $100 cheaper. People will be happy about that. And then this one right here, I'm not really sure where they'll go. They'll either stick it, because it does have an actual performance uplift. They could keep it at $549, which is the new 4070 price, and I think that would be fine. But if they really want to move units, they'll go for $499, and then that'll ship a lot of units. So this one, I could see them going either way. This one is definitely going to be a $699 and then $999. That makes the most logical sense for these. Now, I guess they could do $749, but once again, it just depends how much inventory they want to clear before 50 series. If they need these, if they have a lot and they need them to start flying off shelves, we're going to get better pricing. Basically what I'm saying. If they're like, nah, we don't really need to sell units, then we might get basically the same prices with like 2% faster. All right. I mean, that's not really going to move units, I don't think. But yeah, either way, like, this is obviously a step in the right direction, but if these come out, let's say February, they're launched at CES, come out like a month later, you're what, 10 months away from 50 series, at least being announced. Should be the end of next year and probably early 2025. I actually think a flagship will come out next year, but the mainstream lineup, like the 80 class and the 70 class, which, by the way, these are now mainstream level graphics cards. This is your mainstream right here, right in there. That's mainstream. This is entry level. So your mainstream level stuff, yeah, that'll probably come 2025. And I would say this level probably the end of 2025 towards Christmas. But I could see either a 90 or a Titan coming out next holiday season. But I can't find it, but there's now talk that the 8102s are no longer in production, which makes sense. NVIDIA stops making their high-end chips about 1 year before the replacement comes out, which would line up perfectly with a high-end graphics card coming out at the end of next year. But anyways, guys, I'm going to go check the chat, see what you guys have to say on this stuff. For me, it's a big fat nothing burger. The performance doesn't matter. Now, if the prices are hyper aggressive, like $499 on the 4070 Super, that'd be really good. I think that at that price, that's a pretty good card. At that performance level, you're looking at close to a 4090, like in between a 3080 and a 3090. So what a 70 class probably should have been to begin with. And at $499, what a 70 class price also should have been. Being a year and a half after the launch of the series, though, is it enough? For me, I'd say no. You guys, if you're in the market, you should buy something this holiday season. Is it worth waiting a few months to save $100 or $200? In my opinion, it's not. It's not worth. It's not enough money to be worth wasting your time on. But that's just my opinion. Now, if you're really tight on your budget and you're like, I only have this amount of money, I've saved it specifically for this use case and I want to get the most out of it, it might be worth waiting the month or two then. But if you can spring the extra 100 or two, why wait? Just get what you want now. Literally don't care about GPUs anymore. It's just a big scam at this point. Kind of. It kind of is. I agree. I think it's just because people have finally recognized that it is a monopoly. AMD is not competition. Intel obviously isn't competition yet. So it's basically just NVIDIA does what NVIDIA does, and you either buy or you don't. There is no option. It's an illusion of choice. I think the real issue is we're now getting games that even the 40 series, for the most part, now the 4090 is still pretty strong, but it's pretty evident to me that graphics cards are going to need a new ASIC to accelerate different aspects of games to get proper performance. So my guess is we're not going to be seeing games get faster. Like if you take GTA 5, like the 5090 maybe 0% faster than a 4090. It'll probably be a little bit, but not much. However, newer games that aren't rendered the same way as old games, they're going to see massive uplifts. And that's what I think the next generation is going to bring. It's going to be a paradigm shift. The architectural shift is going to be a pretty big deal. I don't think it's going to be a chock full of gimmicks. I just think that it's going to have different accelerators for what modern games, like today's modern games, not like 6 months ago's modern games, because those games are now out of date, and that's just not that's not how games are going to be made moving forward. Games that came out in the last couple of months here that run like dog shit, that's how games are going to be run and made moving forward. So graphics cards need to get exponentially better at what those types of games need, which for the most part is real-time lighting. That seems to be the major killer of performance that me and my buddy Eric, who's a game developer, fan of the channel, spent a lot of time screwing around with RoboCop. That's where a lot of the performance gets nuked, is the fact that there's no baked-in lighting anymore. Everything's done in real time. That's why games look grainy, because they have to denoise. They're doing all the shading in real time. Good way to think about it is back in the day with Fear, with the soft shadows, that was very, very basic and rudimentary. Nowadays, it's much more advanced. It does look really good at higher settings, but the computational horsepower needed is dramatically higher, and you're not even saturating all of your shader cores. The more shader cores will not make these games faster. So they need something else. That I'm unsure of. I'm not, a game designer or an engineer. But it is very clear that games need something else that current graphics cards do not offer. So that's what I see 50 series offering, which once again makes these super series seem even more stupid, because it's like modern graphics cards too slow if you want to play the latest and greatest games. Yeah, the 4090 will do it. It can brute force it because it's a big monster. But outside of that, and that's still only at 1440p, by the way, if you're wanting 4K, you're going to need an next-gen flagship, which is just nuts. 4070 Ti, 256 bus, 25% more bandwidth. Doesn't matter. It's not bandwidth starved. We already know that. So the bandwidth won't do it any good. It's just going to get it more RAM. Or maybe it will. I don't know. Like I say, the 4070, I think, did benefit from more bandwidth. So yeah, maybe. But even still, you're talking, what, an extra 2 or 3%. It won't be much. 4080's $800 card, but all things considered, I guess 1,000 isn't horrible. Well, here's the thing. What's the AMD card going for? Let's look that up. There's a good rule of thumb. NVIDIA always superior to AMD, and going here. Zoom out. There you go, so you guys can see a little bit better. See what AMD thinks their graphics cards are worth. Remember, we're in the holiday season. It's 11/11. This is holiday shopping time too. So what do AMD want for their card that's roughly just as performant? They still want $950 for the thing. They're throwing in some game nobody cares about. So $950. So yeah, the Nvidia card's easily worth $999. Now, if this was like $699, then yeah, then Nvidia would have to do $800. But yeah, so Nvidia can throw out whatever price they want, but it's the market that determines what the price is. How does the market determine that? Well, number one, are people buying it? And then number two, what's your competition offering at a similar price point? Like if this thing was like 4090 level, then yeah, the 4080 also would not be worth $999. But yeah, at these price points, yeah, it's easily worth $999. But I doubt that these things are selling. So Nvidia is probably like I said, it just depends whether or not they need to move units. If they're like, yeah, we're sitting on like a whole warehouse full of chips and they need to get gone within the next year, let's get rid of these things. They will. They'll price appropriately to get rid of them. If a 4090 doesn't run a game, it's broken. I mean, I kind of agree with that, but also at the same time, no. Here's the thing. The 4090 was built to run games that aren't being made anymore. I guess you could say that maybe that's poor planning from NVIDIA's part. Maybe it was planned obsolescence. Maybe. I mean, you can look at it from that perspective as well. Or perhaps maybe they didn't realize that these games would be rushed out as fast as they were, because a lot of these games are being made with Unreal Engine 5 with no tweaks to Unreal Engine 5. So it's just out of the box, bare bones, basic UE5. So these games can be produced very quickly. A lot of the assets are just stock Unreal Engine assets as well. So this way they don't have to create their own textures and all the rest of this stuff. So that saves a lot of time. And yeah, perhaps they were like, yeah, it should be around the 50 series when we start seeing a lot of these games. And a lot of these companies were like, I want to take advantage of the hype, so no engine optimizations, no custom anything, just throw the game together as fast as possible. Now, once again, I'm ragging on RoboCop because I spent a lot of time looking into why is this thing not running so good. But the game is fun. That's why I spent the time. So it's actually a fun game. And that's the real crux of the problem. So like with Immortals of Avium, nobody cares. Nobody's going to play the game. I think, let me see if I can look this up. Last time I looked at it, was like, what, 20 people a day are playing that? Steam Immortal of Avium charts. See if we can find this. Let me get you guys pulled over. Steam info, SteamDB. Yeah, so here it is. 43 in the last 24 hours. So literally less than the amount of people that are in this live stream right now in the last 24 hours have even bothered to play this game. So yeah, nobody cares about this game. The real problem is once we get games that people actually want to play, that's when it starts becoming a little bit of an issue. Now, here's the flip side. NVIDIA was smart enough to come out with their DLSS 3. AMD's obviously smart enough to follow, and everybody's kind of all on board with upscaling. The amount of people that are now on board with running 540p and 720p upscaled to real resolutions is pretty staggering. Now, older generation hardware can run these newer games, but they will be running 540p or 720p. The upscaling tech helps it look slightly better, but it's still very low res. And yeah, it just seems a lot of people are okay with that. Uh, 4090, 1440p Master Race. Yep, PF fits that one pretty good. Good rule of thumb is don't buy AMD. It's a pretty good general rule of thumb. You'll be better off than not most of the time. I'm sure there might be the odd occasion where the AMD product makes more sense. Typically on the lower end of the graphics card scale, they're usually better than their NVIDIA counterparts there, especially on price to performance. But if you can get a deal on like a used old NVIDIA card that's roughly as performant, you're usually better off going that route than the AMD card. But yeah, Just perfect example of this is, let's say you want to play a game and it's got, let's say, NVIDIA Hairworks or some silly NVIDIA only feature, DLAA, any of the myriad of only works on NVIDIA features, even if you're using like a 2070 or something, you get access to pretty much all of that. Whereas with any AMD card, most of those don't work, right? So, it's just kind of funny if you want to go play like Batman Arkham games and stuff with physics. I think you can brute force it with an AMD card, but you're still just better off using an NVIDIA. It's weird. Mortals of Upscaling. Well, that's going to be all UB5 games on modern graphics cards besides the 4090. Maybe 4080, 7900 XTX, but I don't think anybody wants to be sitting there going, hi, I got my new $1,000 graphics card. It's a 1080p card. All right. Nobody wants to do that. At least, if you spend $1,600 or they're $2,000 now, you get a $2,000 4090, you're like, at least I'm doing 1440p. Right. That's a real resolution. I can do real resolution. But there's nobody in their right mind that's happy with running 1080p on a graphics card over $500. That's where I'm at with it. I can see people spending $300 on a graphics card and they don't care. They'll use all the gimmicks. And they're like, yay, gimmicks. I can still play the game. I'm just happy to play the game territory. Jonathan, good afternoon. Good afternoon. Here it's actually still morning, but good morning or afternoon, wherever you are. Good evening, if you're on the other side of the world. Let's see. 751 players all time on Avium. Yeah, like I said, nobody played that game. nobody played that game. How many players does Team Fortress 2 have? Oh, way more than Avium. Let me see if we can find it. I'll get you guys back over. Team Fortress 2. There's Classic. Is that what you wanted? I don't know. Get in here. What does it say? In game right now is 68,000. So it doesn't have that cool little chart that the other one had. This is app info, charts. That's what we wanted. Charts. Okay. So here we go. Players right now, peak in the last 24 hours, 78,000. Let's just round that up, 79,000. Peak all time in the past 4 months. This is only in the past 4 months, 250,000. So yeah. Yeah. This is what modern games are really, really fighting against. Like, why, you're not going to be able to compete with this. When did this come out? October 10th, 2007. This 2007 game is far more popular than this brand new Unreal Engine 5 big mega AAA game by, what's the order of magnitude here? 750. Let's just do some math here. Let's just because. Let's do some math. So, all right. So 253, 997, and what was it? 751. I'll even round it up to 760. 334 times more people in the past 4 months. For every player they got, best case scenario, these guys got 334. Yeah. That's part of the reason why I'm also like, new games are really, really going to be struggling to find a base, because obviously multiplayer games last longer. If we go to I'm trying to think of like a good old game. We could always do GTA 5, but they got online. Let's do Skyrim. Let's do the original one too. So this isn't even like the updated special edition. Yeah, so depending on the game, even Skyrim's doing pretty good there. Oh, that's peak all time 12 years ago though. So I guess Team Fortress 2, the peak is like when it happened. So I guess Team Fortress 2 is actually climbing in popularity. Now this version obviously peaked 12 years ago, but this isn't even the special edition. But in the last 24 hours, you're still getting 3,000. And once again, if we go back, let me pull up Immortals of Avium again. Right? So, some games are hits, some games are misses, but, just being the first UE5 game is not going to make you a hit. That's pretty obvious. Numbers don't lie, boys. Numbers don't lie. Let's see. Team Fortress 2 is actually good. That's the trick. Yeah, go figure. Actually, fun games are good. Like Left 4 Dead, Left 4 Dead, and Left 4 Dead 2. Those are still really popular. Skyrim, as you saw, is still pretty darn popular. And that's the old version. That's the DirectX 9 version that we were looking at. And there's still 3,500 people in the last 24 hours concurrent that were playing that. So, yeah, if you make a good quality game, people will play it. And that's really going to be the key moving forward for these guys. But like I said, if they start making games, like I said, RoboCop is literally one of the best games I played in a long time because it's not trying to be anything that it's not supposed to be. It's just a fun RoboCop game, and it does that extremely well. That's where the issue starts coming in, is when actual games are this demanding that people want to play. That can be a bit of an issue. And I don't think that these super cards are going to be fast enough to matter, because even like a 4070 Super, you're at best 1080p card, maybe 1080p in that game with mixed settings. If you want to max out the settings and do the RT and stuff, even a 4070 Super will be a 720p or lower card. You really need like a 4090 just to play those games properly. So what we really need is a new generation of graphics cards. I don't think that these Supers are really going to help. That's my opinion. I am kind of interested to see what you guys think on that one, though. I do find these Steam charts things interesting, though. I do kind of want to look up some other games. What else do we got? What else can we check out and see how they're doing? Right, Doom 2016. We know the multiplayer in this is not super popular. Even this is still getting 805. This doesn't even have mods. And like I said, multiplayer is not going to be doing much of a thing. That's getting pretty good. Dude, Left 4 Dead. Yeah, see, like this is still popping. Pretty good. 35,000. Now, let's see. What's a real stinker that came out this year? That Callisto Protocol. This was one of those like graphic showcases. Hell, even this is beating the crap out of Mortals of Avium. This one actually had a reasonable amount of people that gave it a shot at least. But yeah, nobody's really playing this today, but that's not too bad. I guess some people are still playing that one. What was the other one? Forspoken. That was the other one. Forspoken. That's the other one. The tech. I think we found one that's even worse. Now its peak was a little bit higher, but yeah, ain't nobody playing this game. Right. So these tech demo games just don't hold up. They just don't last. Kind of curious about this though. See, there's more people playing Callisto than Crysis though. Kind of interesting. But yeah, even Crysis has more than Immortals and Forspoken. I just figured let's go back to the old school benchmark game and see how that's doing. Even though this is the remastered version, I guess we could try the OG original. I do have that one on Steam. Yeah, nobody's playing this one. All right. Well, that's just kind of fun. We can sit here and play all day looking at Steam charts, everything. But yeah, good games are what matters. It's pretty obvious. Graphics don't matter with games. I don't care what anybody says. Those numbers don't lie. You have to be a good game first. Nobody really cares about the graphics. Redfall and Gollum, yeah. Gollum's probably even lower than the other ones. Gollum, I think, is probably the worst. But I never saw that as like a AAA sort of game. Those kind of, eh. Fair enough for RoboCop, but what GPU do you need for 60 FPS, 1080p, 3080-ish level or better? And that's not max settings, by the way. That's like a mix between medium and high. If you want to run maxed out 1080p, probably like 7900 XTX 4080 level. Now, granted, you could always just turn down some settings, which doesn't change the visuals of the game all that much, in my opinion. But yeah, if you want to run these games maxed out, forget it. Even a 4090 is like a 1080p card. Golem's great if you like stuff that sucks. Pretty fair. A lot of people played Remnant 2 despite its performance and visuals. Well, a lot of people actually liked that game. That's what I heard. Like, once again, same thing with like RoboCop. It's not visually that great. You can tell that it's not a major AAA game. It's made by like a AA studio. You know, it's definitely a mid-tier game. That's why not reworking the whole Unreal Engine makes a lot of sense for these guys. That's not their thing. But they made a very fun game. Which is the good part. It's just like Terminator Resistance. It's an actually fun game. It feels like a good Terminator game. They know how to make the games with the franchises that they're using. And they know the core audience that they're trying to appeal to are fans of the movies. They're not trying to appeal to gamers. They're not trying to appeal to everybody, some broad, broad reaching nonsense. It's like, no, if you like the movies, you'll like this game. That's kind of what they're going for. And they're very, very good at that because they hit the notes and they hit the beats real good. You need high on effects for RoboCop to avoid most of the visual noise. Yes, because effects is not effects. Effects is actually the lighting. We spent a lot of time figuring that out. But yes, you need high at the very least or turn it off completely, which would be low, which will give you a completely different look to the game because it won't be casting any of the shadows. It's a very strange look. It's like Super Mario 64. You walk in a room because there's no ambient occlusion anymore because you don't need that when everything's actually casting shadows, right? So literally, it's just polygons with textures, and I kind of liked it, but in some areas, like you could tell things just didn't look right. Like the atmosphere was completely destroyed when you do that. Although you got much better performance out of it, so it's kind of a trade-off, kind of a teach their own. But yes, do not use medium on effects in RoboCop. It's pretty much pointless. It's worth taking the performance hit to go to high because the visual uplift is dramatic. RoboCop 4090 plus 1440p plus max equals the only way your graphics will not look grainy and noisy. Still does a little on wet roads. Yeah, well, that's because of how it's going to do it. We're going to be stuck with grain for a long time. These things just can't cast enough rays to properly simulate the stuff perfectly, or not the way that like you could when you faked it, right? That's really the big trick. Is like way back when it would just be the texture would be darker, poof, shadow, right? Like requires zero processing power. But it meant that it's completely static. It's not dynamic. There, of course, were things like ambient occlusion and little tricks like that that helped the graphics out and kind of made things look a little bit better. However, with the way that they're doing the lighting, things do look a lot more real. But because of the lack of processing power that we have to do that, they have to, there's side effects, like the grain being a big one. Yeah. Higher resolution is going to be it. Let's ditch UE5. The only way, well, it doesn't matter what engine you're using. There's the Alan Wake's not using UE5, but it has all the same problems because it's doing the same techniques, right? So it's not a UE5 thing. It's more the direction that games are going moving forward. Now, why would they be doing this? Well, this is a lot easier on game developers. Remember when we talked years and years ago saying that they don't have to worry about baking and lighting. This saves the artists a lot of time. They basically just create the world, make sure, the stuff's set up the way that they want, and then just let the hardware basically do what it needs to do to cast all this stuff. It saves a lot of time, effort, and resources. It also is significantly more demanding. But with the inclusion of fluid motion frames, your fake frames, and DLSS, aka people are cool with standard definition resolutions again, then, they're able to push this on modern hardware, even though the modern hardware really can't run this stuff. they can fake it till they make it, I guess you can say. So yeah, developers are not going to go back. They're not going to go back to killing themselves. This new way does look better. So even though it is more demanding, it does look better. It's not significantly better. It's not like 3 or 4 times more horsepower needed better, but it still looks better. So it looks better, and it's cheaper for them to make games, cheaper and easier. So the only people getting screwed is the end user, and that's the only person in this equation they're okay with getting screwed. It's up to us to either pony up or wait and buy the games. But, ultimately it comes back down to if the games are good, people will buy the hardware to play it. It's that simple. If the games are crap, like Immortals of Aveum, as we just took a look at, nobody's going to buy hardware. What, of those like 70 people that played the game in the last like day, who cares if they buy graphics cards? That's not moving any needles. They need some killer apps to really get there. Like I said, RoboCop's really cool, but I don't think anybody's going to buy $2,000 graphics cards for one game. But, if you start piling on quite a few, it'll start making sense for a lot of people. DLSS ray reconstruction fixes the grain, even though it does have some ghosting. Yeah, so that's just throwing more problems in there. You're better off not using it. They have to do it without DLSS. Maybe integrated into DLAA, meaning you don't lower the resolution, because that's the other key factor here. The higher your base resolution, the less grainy it looks as well. So, for example, if you run like RoboCop at 4K, you can lower the effects settings and it'll look better. Like it kind of offsets. So now if you're running the higher settings at higher resolutions, not that DLSS low resolution crap, I'm talking actually native high resolution, it does look a lot better. But there's nothing that can run these games at 4K with like maxed out details. Maybe a 4090 can run it with high medium settings, maybe, but yeah, it's just not going to be where you want on that one. But DLAA is usually pretty good, but RoboCop, it's terrible, so you don't use that anyway. Use TSR. It just looks better. Revenant 2, I thought looked pretty cool, actually. Yeah, a lot of people I know in Discord, they played it. They liked it. They liked the game. I'm like, that's cool. I'm glad you like the game. It runs like crap, but if it's a fun game, you'll suffer, right? So like I played RoboCop on the RTX 3060 up in the living room. I just ran the game at 720p. It ran over 60 FPS. It was 1440p, 50% scaling. 720p. It was good enough. I was able to play the game, and like I said, the game was fun, so I just didn't care. And I think that's what I think most people just do on the few games that come out that are like this, that are good, that people want to play. They'll just deal with it, play the game, and move on. If this becomes a regular thing, they're going to demand higher end hardware. Once again, the Super Series just isn't going to provide that. They're too slow. Every card there is too slow. The only card this generation that's worth talking about is a 4090 with these newer games. It's a 4090 or nothing. Just buy last gen, buy a 3060 or a 3080. So those are basically your 3 GPU options to make any logical sense. 3060, 3080, 4090. That's it. Every other graphics card is pretty stupid, and the whole Super lineup is pretty much useless. You could argue, like I said, 7900 XTX maybe. Some games are going to run pretty good on that because of its memory bandwidth, because of the extra VRAM, stuff like that. Yeah, and 4090s are getting stupid money now, so maybe you go that route. I don't know, but in reality, those are really the only 3 graphics cards I'd recommend to anybody today. But the developer companies must believe that enough will have the required hardware, or am I just being dumb here? Well, no, they believe that people will just use the upscaling and just play the game. But no, they're building games for people. Nobody has hardware really to play these games properly. they'll technically work. Like I said, I played on my RTX 3060. Just had to play it at 720p. Not exactly ideal, but it played. I enjoyed the game. It's one of those things like you can't build a long-term game like a Destiny 2. Like RoboCop was actually kind of long. It took a little while. I think 12, 13 hours, something like that. I did a lot of the side stuff. I had fun with it. I actually just sat down and enjoyed it. So I played through most of the side content as well, but you play it for 10, 12 hours, you put it down. I'll probably play it again a year or two from now. By then I'll likely have more powerful hardware and it'll run slightly better, and then 2 or 3 years later I'll play it again, and then I'll have even more powerful hardware and so on and so forth. So for a game like that, it's not a big deal, but for like a game that's meant to be played all the time, these life-sucking, soul-sucking games like Destiny 2 or COD or any of these games, they can't get away with this because it'll just annoy the shit out of people. It will just bother them too much. But for games that are kind of short-lived, I think that'll work okay. Hopefully RTX will become more efficient then. Well, no, they just need different accelerators. You'll get a new architecture from NVIDIA next gen. We assume it's Blackwell, but it could just be something completely different, tailor-made to basically run this stuff. But yeah, they'll make it so next generation will be 2 to 3 times faster in these games with these specific lighting and instructions and all that. Even if they're no faster in old traditional raster baked-in lighting games, basically old games that aren't going to be made anymore, might be the same performance, might even be slower, but it's going to be so much faster in newer, more demanding games where you actually need the hardware. That's where they're going to get the selling point. I believe AMD will go the same route as well. So, for example, we know that they're probably scrapping their 2 high-end multi-chip designs. But even if they come out with like a mid-range graphics card, kind of a low to mid-range graphics card, it might still be significantly better than their current offerings if they can accelerate what modern games now need. So they could potentially get away with that. So basically what would it be? Like a 7800 XT replacement level graphics card, but it might be faster in modern games than a 7900 XTX. But in old games, it might be 7800 XT level. Like, so that sort of a thing. That'd be kind of interesting. We'll have to wait and see. TSR does introduce ghosting and reflections. Yeah, I mean, there's no perfect option in the game. That just happens to be the best because the grain is very noticeable. Like DLAA is usually the best way to go. It's another reason to buy NVIDIA. It's usually the best way to go from my experience. But in that particular game, it's not. It's just too grainy. So yeah, it's just super annoying that you have to pick your poison now because there's so much calculation going on constantly. Compared to like an older game. Great example of this would be think of like Wolfenstein: The New Order. All right, because I just played through the old blood here lately. That's using the old id Tech 5. That was using mega textures. Literally everything was baked in. These were giant mega textures. I think even Doom 2016 still used this technology as well. Where they baked in like literally everything into the textures. There was some dynamic lighting, but it was very, very minimal. And that was how they were able to get 60 FPS on a PlayStation 3 and an Xbox 360 in the Wolfenstein: The New Order, which, kind of blows your mind when you think about it. It's like, man, an Xbox 360 is running that game at 60 FPS. Yep. But that's because it's not calculating much in real time. That's how they were able to do it. So they faked the crap out of it. And like I said, I believe Doom 2016 retained a lot of that. It wasn't until id Tech 7 with Doom Eternal where they got rid of all of that stuff, but the mega texture stuff. But yeah, that's how they used to do stuff. They used to fake it super hard. They're just not going to be doing that anymore. So we're going to have to deal with the grain. We'll have to deal with it. until, we get stuff that's powerful enough to run 4K native, none of this upscaling nonsense. Um, then it should, look fine enough, I would imagine. Somebody said Remnant's good, but fast-paced shooters with stuttering is probably the most frustrating gaming experience after multi. Okay. Only drawback I found and maintained image. Oh, it's the only drawback I found and maintained image quality really well at 1440p. Yeah, it's like I said, it's like the best worst option. Unfortunately, there's no better option that I could find. I spent a lot of time screwing around with that game, trying to get it to run better. Because see, here's the thing: like, I'm trying to use just one machine and have it stream to the rest of the house, which works fine. But I can't run any game with 1% lows under 120 FPS. So it has to be 120 FPS locked in all games for all time. I don't care what the resolution or settings are. Like, I'll run 540p low. Don't care. I need the 120. You can't do it. Not with the hardware that I have. Maybe with like a 4090, but I'm not spending $2,000 again on a graphics card to do that. So that really sucked. It was actually better just running the 720p on the 3060 natively up there. For input latency, you need at least 120 FPS. I'd say 90 works, but the image quality for in-home streaming isn't very good. You really want that 120 locked for a really good experience. In older games, that's not a problem, but in these newer games, that's just not really a thing. Also with Rage, that game looked awesome on the 360. Yeah, all the id Tech 5 was designed to run on those consoles because they were so limited. I mean, the PlayStation 3 only had 256 megs of system memory and 256 megs of VRAM. Like, at least the Xbox had the 512 megs shared between them, so you could kind of balance it out however you need to. Like, that was always that generation's weak spot, was they just went way too low on RAM. Even for when they came out in 2005, 512 megs was just not a lot. They really should have went with the gig, but anyways, yeah, so id Tech 5 was designed to work within that major limitation and maintain 60 FPS and not compromise on resolution, because like Rage and Wolfenstein also run 720p, actual 720p. So like Call of Duty runs at like 540p and says it's 720p on like an Xbox 360. No Call of Duty besides I think 2. I think Call of Duty 2, maybe 3 did. But once they hit like Modern Warfare, they were sub 720p. So id wanted to run 720p, actual 720p, and 60 FPS locked. And the best way to do that was the mega textures. There's such a big gap in CUDA cores on the 4080 versus 4090. What do you think? Do you think that they will release an 80 Ti? No. When is the last time they didn't release an 80 Ti? That'd be the 580. Was the last generation they did not have an 80 Ti because they didn't exist yet. The reason why they're not going to do this is the other part. Did forget to kind of mention this earlier, or I glossed over it. I can't find it, but there was a video where they're saying retailers are now being prepped that they're not going to be receiving 4090s moving forward. Apparently, NVIDIA is ramping down their production of GA102s, which makes logical sense because they don't want to get stuck with those big, expensive die. So if you guys remember, a year before the 4090 came out, they stopped GA102. They stopped making 3080. So 6 months before the 3090 Ti came out, they stopped making GA102s. So they didn't produce a single one for 6 months. And then they launched a GA102 based chip. This is how NVIDIA does this. This makes sure that they never have oversupply, and they never have to reduce prices because they just stop making the things. So them ramping this down kind of makes sense. It also leads me to believe that within a year, we're going to see a new flagship. Probably not going to be a 5090. It will likely be a Titan. It'll likely be $3,000 or $4,000. but that'll probably be out for next holiday, and then the 5090 and the rest of the lineup will come out there shortly thereafter. Which will probably also not use the 102 die. So you probably get a 103 as the 90 next generation because of the increased cost of the 3 nanometer. But anyways, that's just my guess. We'll see how it goes. Or they might change the names up on them. But I expect a flagship next holiday season. So, yeah. So 102 dies, I would not expect to see in anything other than the 4090 in the consumer space. They'll just be allocated all to the professional level and then 4090s. Because the 4090 is so heavily cut down that there's just no reason to put anything underneath, right? Like the only reason those chips wouldn't work is if the memory controller gets hit and they can't do the 384-bit bus, which does lend some credence to why don't they make a 320-bit version, but they probably do in the professional space. I haven't looked it up because I don't pay any attention there, but they probably have a 20 gig version for the professionals, so all the defects of that will likely get sold over there. So, yeah, there's just no reason for it. There's no reason for it. So, if you didn't buy a 4090 over the summer, you're probably just better off waiting for the next generation at this point. You can buy one now, but you're going to be paying pretty much scalper prices of last year if you get it today. So it's not exactly that much fun. Hey, Goal, thank you so much for the 50 pesos. He says, waiting for the 4090 Peasant Edition. Has to be paid on credit. Has a speaker that calls you a peasant on boot and bricks the card if it is disabled. Yes, the Peasant Edition. Yes. Yeah, I mean, it makes logical sense that people would think that it would come out, but a lot of the stuff like China not being able to get the cards, the fact that they're cutting down cards specifically to meet the spec that the government has banned. They're using 102 dies for that as well. So they could also, I know memory bandwidth's part of it. So they're likely going to feed all of those bad memory controller chips to that too. That was the other thing. So yeah, they just have better spots to put all of these chips. They're not going to waste their time on an 80 Ti. We'll get the super cards, maybe a 4060 super if they need to move more 104 dies, but that's it. We're pretty much done. This generation's pretty done. I went over the numbers. The performance of the supers are going to be lackluster. The price might save them. In reality, you're just better off buying something else here today. Like if you need a card, just go buy something. Spend the extra $100. Get it now. No point wasting your time. Pony saying 3090 is for peasants. Games are supposed to make you want to upgrade. He said, they aren't. I think he meant if they aren't, then they're not doing their job. All right. Well, Pony did the compete pre-stream, so he's correct. If you play a game and don't feel bad about your hardware, well, then the game is crap and you should uninstall it. Just buy a 10-inch 720p monitor and scale from 240p. Whoop, the future. Steam Deck in it. There you go. Yeah, that's the future of the Steam Deck, by the way. 240p. Go back to that PlayStation 1 level. Yeah. There we go. I mean, that's kind of where like the Series S is going to need to be. If you think about it, that's going to have to be sub 540p. We're talking standard definition levels of visual fidelity. It's going to get pretty rough. Biggest problem I see is lazy devs and the user being forced to run RT on the games that look like 2010. I mean, you could chalk it up to lazy devs to a certain degree. Because if you're just running Unreal Engine out of the box, it's like not tuning your PC, right? You're leaving so much performance on the table, but apparently it's a lot more. So the same game dev guy that was helping me with RoboCop, because I'm like, how do I make this run better? He's building his game using UE5, but he basically rewrote UE5 to run his game properly. And he's like, it's amazing how much performance gets wasted in this engine if you don't custom tailor it. And yeah, so basically he showed me an image of like there's like millions of buildings being rendered on both sides, with with dynamic lighting and everything else running on like a 3060. He's like, you can run really, 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 really cool stuff, but it takes a lot of work to do it. So here's the thing. If you want to be able to play every game that comes out that you might want to play, meaning you want the ability to play all of them, you have to be able to run the worst running one, which is the out-of-the-box experience. So RoboCop's really good for that because that is very much the out-of-the-box experience. If you can run that game at visual fidelity and resolution and frame rate that you like, then you're probably going to be okay. It's a pretty good test system there because it's very much out of the box. Now, developers that want to really showcase, like first party developers, Sony and Microsoft and those guys, like the Coalition's really good with Unreal Engine. They're going to be able to do significantly more and raise the bar much, much higher than the smaller development teams because they'll get much more out of the hardware. Now, granted, you might have the same crappy resolution, same crappy frame rate, but you'll get significantly better visuals or some sort of balance, right? So, yes, Unreal Engine itself isn't the problem. It's the out-of-the-box state of Unreal Engine is the problem. But there's no fixing that. There's going to be a lot of games that you're going to want to play that are going to be made by developers that don't have the time, effort, money, or care. It's one of those or some combination to go ahead and completely customize the engine for just their one game. It's just not going to happen. Pony, thank you for the 5 spot. He says, unless NVIDIA launches a 4090 Ti or Titan card, then their super refresh is pointless, which they're not, since none of those cards allow you to compete anyways. Correct. Which is kind of what I've been saying this whole time in a roundabout way. Why would you buy these stupid cards? If you want a 4070, get a 4070. If you want, what the 4070 Super is, just spend the $200 more and get a 4070 Ti. It's just not worth it. Don't waste the time. Standard definition plus. I like it. I'm going to use that from SD plus. That's right. Forget HD. Or what was it? Enhanced EHD? Enhanced definition? That's what we're going back to. Yeah, ED TVs. I remember that was a thing because it could do 480p instead of 480i. It took me forever to figure that out. I was like, what the hell is an ED TV? I ran across one a few years ago. I'm like, I don't even know what this is. But it could do 480p. Ooh. Which is actually really, really bad. Don't buy one of those if you want a retro TV. It means it has a digital interface in the back, so input lag. It'll add input lag, so you don't actually want them. That's how bad those are. Next generation performance prediction in modern games, 2x. You're gonna see 2x in like UE5 games. I would expect no more than 20% faster in old raster games. Lazy devs is the funniest thing. Read all the time by clueless people with zero skills in computer science. Yeah, I mean, well, it's not technically wrong, though. That's the thing. It's just we're kind of at like this weird inflection point where the software is now completely outpaced the hardware. The real problem is visually it doesn't look that much better either. It's doing a lot more. Like I said, all the lighting and all the shadows and everything, that's all being done in real time pretty much for the first time. And a lot of games you would have real shadows being cast. Like that's been a thing since like Doom 3 with pixel shaders. But it wasn't like, well, I guess Doom 3 kind of did it. But that game was super dark. Now you're getting much more realistic sort of natural bounce lighting and things like that. So things don't look like pitch black or, completely lit like Doom 3. So I guess you could say that this is kind of the next evolution of that, is where you get the bounce lighting, which is why you have the graininess, which, as we all know, is kind of like a ray traced effect. That's how that works. But it's all being done in real time. So the computational performance necessary is significantly higher. It does not use pixel shaders. because you're never going to use the full power of your graphics card, which is hilarious. Lower shader counts is actually probably going to be necessary for this. You're going to need either more RT cores or something else, some other ASIC to accelerate this. Just that. So shader cores will likely not increase moving forward because they're pretty much useless at this point. For modern games, you're just not going to be able to saturate those. So just as an example, I was playing RoboCop on the 3080, and I couldn't get it anywhere near to pulling its full power. So it was never utilizing the full graphics card. At most, once I disabled the real-time lighting and all of that stuff, I was able to get it up to 290 watts. We're still about 20 to 30% shy of where that graphics card should be hitting when it's fully maxed out. For example, I go ahead and play Days Gone. This thing was pulling 360 watts in that game. It's an older game. It's a DirectX 11 game, but it's, coded differently. It used the shader cores. Modern games don't use shader cores anymore. Shader cores don't really matter. They need accelerators, and that's going to be the future moving forward. It's all going to be accelerators. Best benchmark for RoboCop is the warehouse bot fight. Shit made my frames tank like crazy. Yeah, unfortunately, you can't bench that. You can't bench fights. You have to find a spot where you just kind of run from point A to point B. I'm trying to think. I would just do the city at night once you get, from the beginning. That's strenuous enough. But yeah, I mean, you can definitely tank from there. I'd rather see some effort poured into getting multi-GPU back. That's just a waste of time. Than splashing money on 10% more performance. I mean, yeah, but nobody's going to do that. ITX builds are too popular. Laptops are too popular. Small devices are too popular. Maybe on the extreme high end, but here's the thing. They're not going to, unless it's something like NVIDIA could do at the driver level that just works across the board. Low effort, super low effort, then maybe, but I don't see that actually being a thing. I think ED is short for something else. Yes, it is as well. Comanzo, yeah, welcome, buddy. He said, long time no see. As a 1080 owner, I'm waiting for 5080, 5090, 1440p max ray tracing. Okay. Yeah, that'll probably do you for quite a while. Forgot 1080p. Next gen gonna be 1081p. $200 more expensive. That's right. That one extra P, 50% price increase. Everybody's learning from NVIDIA. That's how you do it, right? It's like minuscule better. Massive price hike. You've seen Pirate Software hugely increase subs, haven't you? Okay. Take The Last of Us, sure to be a hit because of a popular franchise, and they released on the PC broken. Well, that game was just broken. Gets bad press and lots of refunds, but then literally spends 6 months fixing it. Good job. Yeah, I mean, good on them. If it's fixed, I haven't tried that in forever. And it's just not a good game, in my opinion, to begin with, but in the old days, lazy devs used to unintentionally push tech forward by getting used to outspec workstations, higher res monitors, and so on. Now it's become harmful. Well, not really. This is a push that's needed to happen, which is real time lighting and everything. This is needed to happen for a while for the developers, so this way they can reduce their costs and their budgets and everything. I think part of the real issue is the fact that these guys, their teams are too big. I mean, most of these AAA developers, they're just too big. They should be cutting costs elsewhere as well. But this was always going to be needed We're just going through the growing pains of it, and the hardware to properly run these things don't exist yet. That's the real problem. The software has to come first. Here it is. You can brute force it if you have the most powerful hardware. Danny Z, welcome, buddy. You're talking to PF. Definitely a lot of pressure from the top, from the food chain. Those folks obey shareholders, yep, and hold their passion for games as a genuine dev, but they got no choice. Yeah, well, there's definitely that too. Pony, thank you so much for the 10 spot. He says, when game devs switch to the newest consoles, it has always required PC upgrade to play Ultra settings. If running everything at Ultra is important to you, be prepared to upgrade every generation. Yeah, I think what we're starting to see is that gets delayed, though. So the new generation came out, and I said it even when those came out. I'm like, we're not going to see next-gen games for 2 to 3 years. That's exactly what happened. Same thing, next gen might be 3 to 4 years. It's going to get longer and longer, and these console generations will continue to expand and expand because the cross-gen, especially if they stick with x86, they'll just keep getting longer and longer and longer because nobody wants to leave that old customer base behind, right? Like, what was there, like 80 million PlayStation 4 sold, something like that? A lot. And then, AMD can only produce so many PS5s. Even if you gave them a whole year, what were they at? Maybe like 10 million? It's not even close. So you don't want to make games for 10 million potential people. You want to make games for 90 million potential people. Now, once, PS5s get up to 20 or 30 million, there's enough of those guys there. Once the consoles are readily available on shelves, anybody who wants to buy them, now you can basically force people to upgrade because people can go out and actually upgrade. The hardware is there. That's when it starts making sense. So I think that's when you really start seeing the big push. Now, what I find funny is these new games and the way that they're being programmed are so demanding that the current gen consoles can't touch it. They're way too slow. They are not prepared for this. So like I said, you get a small visual increase, fidelity increase, but you get a monstrous computational increase. And this is really the only logical next step to go because it also brings down production cost. So this is kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't sort of thing because it's like it needed to happen, but the current gen consoles they can't do it. So this is where the upscaling is kind of a saving grace. Like, yeah, a PS5 might be doing 720p 30, but they'll upscale it to 1440p. Yay, good job, whatever. That might just be the case, right? That just might be the way that they have to do it. So it also gives Sony the option to do a PS5 Pro or Microsoft to do, the same thing if they want to. Jedi Survivor still isn't fixed. That sucks. Also, EA. Yeah, I don't trust EA to fix anything. If it's broken at launch, it's probably going to remain that way. Let's see. Free to think saying he has a new channel. You're talking about somebody. And has increased his subs by like gajillions of percent by doing lives and shorts in a particular way. Okay. I don't know who you're talking about. Let's see. Bum. Danny was saying something up here. Let's see what he got. He said Nintendo said that they could have released Tears of the Kingdom in 2022, but they took an extra year to polish the game. The Switch, kind of remarkable the way the Switch ran it. Yes. Well, see, that's the thing. I don't know if you guys watch MVG, Modern Vintage Gamer. I like his stuff. He's a game dev himself, but I like his content. Good. Especially when he goes over like the impossible ports and stuff, like stuff that shouldn't run on certain hardware. Like I kind of like that. I find that interesting. Anyways, I was watching his Quake running on the Game Boy Advance today because I was like, what? Game Boy Advance was a little tiny piece of junk that barely ran 2D games. I mean, I had one. It was fun, but It's like a Super Nintendo. It's like there's no way you're running Quake on effectively a Super Nintendo. Well, apparently some guy did. And guess what? He wrote the game in assembly, or the engine in assembly. And that's the key. That's the key that you're not going to that's going to basically be your big difference between games that run very, very well on very modest hardware and games that don't. The more games that are wrote in assembly, which is bare metal, like pre API, like as low level as it gets, those games are going to run very, very well. You can extract extreme amounts of performance and visual fidelity out of it, to the point where, you know, if you're just using pre-built UE stuff, like RoboCop is a perfect example, you might need 10 to 20 times the hardware. So you could probably make do with 5% the hardware if you wrote the whole game in assembly. Nobody does this anymore. It's a lot easier for them to use, you know, like I said, just the out-of-the-box stuff. It's a lot cheaper. The programmers and capabilities to do that is very hard. I remember a guy that I used to work with. He was in college and he was talking about writing in assembly, and he's like, I had no problems till this point, and he lamented about it for quite a while. And I was like, I get it. But if you want to get max performance, that's how you have to do it. The dude who wrote Roller Coaster Tycoon, that game ran on everything when that came out in the 90s because it was written in assembly from the ground up. So it could run on a toaster, even back then when toasters didn't even have electricity. Like, that's how impressive that game was. So that's really the way forward for developers if they really want to be a technical showpiece. And I would imagine that's probably how id Tech runs so well, is it's probably, most of it's probably written in assembly. So we'll see if these guys get the message, or what's better for them and their sponsors and partners is to not do that, and then you have to have 10, 20 times the performance to run the game as it could technically be run. So it doesn't really benefit anybody besides the developer. Like, if the developer really wants the game to run, they really want it to shine, they really want it to stand out, then it's in their best interest to do that. But outside of smaller developers, I can't see anybody doing that. Really, really passionate people. But as far as I can tell, that's the only way this whole situation could get fixed. I just don't think it's going to happen. Shout out for MVG. Yeah, absolutely. You should go check out his stuff. It's great. Like, if you really, really like games, and you're an old fart like me and him are probably pretty close in age. If you're old farts like us and you want to know some of the behind the scenes stuff, he does some really cool videos. If devs access the board were as efficient as the gurus porting them, Doom, Quake, to portables, we could get tons more performance out of older hardware. Yeah, but you really have to sit down and think, who does that really benefit? Benefits the end user. The end user is not the primary concern for any of these companies. Not really. You know, forcing people to upgrade hardware is in the best interest of most of these people or their partners. The whole world revolves around you spending money. Literally, that's how we've designed our society here today. I'm not saying whether that's right or wrong, but that's just the way it is. The more money you spend, the better off everybody else in the world is. So you keeping your money is not in the best interest of literally anyone. So yeah, that's unfortunate. The unfortunate truth there. I'm the guy that reads cereal boxes. Well, that is weird. Yeah, if you're weird, we love you, buddy. Danny's saying I pulled the first roller coaster tycoon from a cereal box. Amazing game. Good times back then. Yeah, I actually remember buying it. It was a fun game. I still like it. I got the GOG version. Sometimes it asks me for a CD key though. I'm like, what? Like put your CD in the tray. I'm like, what? Um, it's a little weird. It's a little quirky, put it that way. The consume society. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's how it goes. It is in almost nobody's best interest for you to keep money in your pocket, except for you. Could AI translate into assembly code? I would imagine so. Actually, that's one of the best use cases for AI that I've ever thought of. I've thought of the same thing. I'm like, because these guys don't know what they're doing. But more than likely, if they get AI to that point, they'll likely just have the AI generate it. So instead of doing any artwork at all, you just type in, like, you write a book effectively, and you upload a book. That, like, you don't need programmers and none of that shit. No artists, no nobody. Like, you just put in techno, kind of like Terminator music mixed with something in parentheses, and then it'll just generate the music out of thin air. Like, that's probably where we're gonna go, where virtually every technique of game development that we have now will be completely obsoleted, and it'll just be people just writing in Notepad, and you just write a small novel, and poof, now you have a game level. Like a chapter to a book or something would be a game level. That's where I think we'll get to now. Yeah, maybe before we get to that point, maybe just have AI write it in assembly as efficiently as is possible. Yeah, I could see that working. Basically, let AI do the optimizing. Yeah. Oh no, a huge part of the industry runs on us wanting more performance. That is so true. Yeah, huge part of the industry runs on people not being satisfied. That's the best way to put it. Yeah, most of the economy is based on people not being satisfied. We'll just leave that there. You can insert pretty much every aspect of the economy. You check out Starfield's latest patch. I did not. I hear that they finally addressed the concerns that you had pointed out, the video cards being underutilized. 2 months later, man, we've moved on. Yeah, these guys really need to get that stuff handled a little bit earlier. I'm surprised that they fixed it though. Bethesda did. I assumed Nvidia would be the one that would have to fix that for them. But the game, yeah, let's see. We still got that. Let's see how Starfield's doing. Jump back on over here. We'll go to our Steam thing. Anybody still playing this game? Yeah, I guess people are still screwing around with this one. They're effing around and finding out. Let's do a month, a day. Okay, lifetime. Count history. Yeah. All right, so it's 10% of where it was at launch 2 months ago. I guess it kind of makes sense, but yeah, I guess enough people are playing it. Not unheard of for a Bethesda game. They tend to stick around a little longer. I had GPT help me out with all kinds of scripting until they dumbed it down. So now I'm training my own. Yeah, well, that's one of the probably the most practical use cases I could see for AI in its current form is writing code. Like you can just kind of tell it a basic thing. I need a program to do X, Y, or Z, and then it'll just give it to you. Like, I know a lot of people will be upset by that, but it's like, yes, you went to school to learn all this stuff that we don't need you anymore. Sorry, your entire job's been erased. Time to learn how to use a shovel and start digging ditches. AI can't dig ditches. So there's a lot of people out there who can be very upset. I went to school to get a cushy job. Well, guess what? Cushy jobs will no longer be a thing because that's pretty much most of the jobs that are going to be taken over. But I think that it'll be the most efficient way of doing that as well. Because machines know how to talk to machines probably better than humans ever will. Let's see. Daisy saying, I agree. Anyone who's wanted to play the game's probably already done so. Yeah. For months that have moved on. Yeah, well, we looked it up. There's still a lot of people playing it, but I think most people are done. Watching the ads for Chris's algorithm. I appreciate it, Capono, but there shouldn't be any ads. YouTube gives me the option of putting in the ads myself, which I always opt for. Besides the initial one, you got to watch the one at the beginning because YouTube. But yeah, I don't put any midstream ads in there. YouTube's really trying to push that, by the way. They are so hurting for money that they want to jam ads into everything. And like that's now the default option. I have to disable it every time I do a live stream for this or Techonomics or whatever. I have to be like, no, I'll manually insert it. And then like it'll pop up reminding me, hey, you can post an ad. It's like, no, I'm good. I'm good. I don't need your stupid ad money. One of these guys throws me a fiver, covers all this stupid ad money anyway. So I've got no interest in YouTube making money. They whatever. But I just wanted to let you guys know YouTube is really pushing that crap real hard. Use AI to randomize puzzles. I mean, don't even really need AI for that. Engineering is a cushy job. For now. I guess it depends on what kind of engineering you're doing. If you're engineering machines or something, sure, maybe. But, you know, if you're engineering a bridge, I don't know how cushy that would be. Let's see. I'm premium, so I don't notice. There you go, goal. That works too. I can think of a whole list of innovations that shocked and upset huge groups of people. Still using a car over a horse. Thumbs up. There you go. Yeah, the horse union was really upset way back when about that. The stable boys union. Yeah. Yeah, there's always other jobs to be had. I think that's what people don't understand is yes, your job may be replaced by something that's cheaper and more efficient than you. That just means that the customers of the company that you're working for can get a cheaper product while the shareholders can get higher margins. So literally everybody wins in that situation. The only expense is you, but now you're freed up to go do something else. And a lot of people don't look at it as an opportunity. They look, I don't know. I guess I've worked so many jobs in my life. Like I bounced around. Like if a job offered me like $1 more an hour, I'd be like deuces, and then I would just go, and then somebody else deuces, and I would just keep bouncing. Because I didn't hold any loyalties to the job. They don't hold loyalties to you, by the way. It's just whoever pays you the most for the least amount of work. That's who you should work for. But because they're going to optimize you optimize them. That's the best relationship you can have with a faceless corporation. But yeah, a lot of people just think, I guess, you get a job and that's what you do your whole life. That's not the way it works anymore. You go get a skill, that's what you do your whole life. Not the way it works anymore. You have to constantly be learning things. Like I don't know. I guess probably the best advice that I can give anybody, because I'm just a natural entrepreneur. I was a kid that had like a stand outside in the front of my house selling random crap that I didn't want anymore. I made my own eBay as a child. Like, all right, here, kind of like a yard sale sort of thing. But I would just do it randomly. Just have a little table, be like, I don't need this stuff anymore, and have it out there and sell it to the kids in the neighborhood. But the best advice I can give anybody, the only job that's guaranteed is the one you make for yourself. And the way that you do that is if you see a need. Maybe there's something you're trying to buy yourself and you can't find it or it's not quite right. If it's something that you can produce yourself, maybe you should start making those, like that sort of thing. Look out for those opportunities. They're everywhere. AI is not going to be able to take them all away. You just might have to do something different than you were expecting. So that's my best advice. Find an opportunity, find a hole. Even if it's a market that you think is saturated, if you can just think of a different way of doing it that might be cheaper or better, might be worth trying. And it's not that expensive to try on a small scale. And if you see success on a small scale, then you scale up, so on and so forth. Do it as like a hobby for a while, see if it works. Invest maybe 5-10 grand, not a lot of money, a little bit of money. And if it works out, great. If it don't, you're not out a whole bunch. So that's just my recommendation. Danny saying Rossman put it the best way. YouTube is basically putting their hand in every couch cushions they can change. Yeah, that's right. That's right. They're looking for every nickel, every dime, every penny, turning over everything. Um, it's really, really sad, actually. Yeah, YouTube went to war with ad blockers. Yep. Because they thought they'd get more money. Best way to sell premium subscriptions. Yeah. Chris, you're so right about copying DDR5 timings. It doesn't work. Yeah, if you guys saw Techonomics the other day, Paul just wanted to. He really wanted to just be like, you just go online. No. When it comes to DDR5, you sit there and you find out. You just have to tune it yourself. Or you can go with me and Danny Z were talking about it. Just go with dual rank. Go with dual rank. Stick with 6400 to 7000. That's kind of your range, depending on if you have M die or A die. And that'll work on pretty much everything. And that'll save you a lot of headaches. If you're shooting for single rank A die, I'll do 7200 pretty easy. But if you're going for anything beyond that, be prepared for. If you're very experienced at tuning RAM, 2 weeks. It'll take you about 2 weeks to kind of figure it out. If you're not experienced at it, 2 months. It'll take you about 2 months at 4 hours a day, 5 days a week, to kind of get it figured out. So, I would say for most people, don't even screw with it. Just get dual rank. So that means 64 or 96 gigabytes of RAM. Spend the extra money. And just stick, like I said, between 6400 and 7000. It's way easier. You won't have as many problems. And you don't need a 2-DIMM board. Best way to get a raise is to job hop. Yeah, 100%. 100%. Or go commission. That's what I ended up doing. My second to last job was I was doing furniture sales, actually. I liked it because it was indoors. I've done like door-to-door sales and stuff like that. I didn't like that so much. So I like the indoors, but I like that when I first started, at least it was 100% commission. They paid high commission rates. So a lot of items were 10%. Some items were 15, like the add-on stuff. And so on and so forth. So basically, my paycheck was completely determined by me. And, if I made $400 in 2 hours and I felt like screwing around the rest of the day, guess what I did? I probably screwed around the rest of the day. The one thing I didn't like is I couldn't just leave and be like, screw you, I made $400 today, I'm done. That was kind of the only negative side to it, but, it was pretty good. You could make anywhere from, I'd say if you're making less than 1,000 a week, you probably should have been fired because that's kind of bare minimum. Up to about 5,000 or 6,000 a week, you could do really well. And overall, it was pretty easy. But I kind of like that because it was in my hands. The harder I worked, the more juking and jiving I did, the more salesy I felt like being, the more razzmatazz I wanted to put into it. Typically, the more money you'd make. You didn't really feel like it, having a bad day. You're like, I made no money today. And then, the next day you make $600-700, so on and so forth. It all balanced itself out. But I kind of like that as well, commission-based jobs. Because, once again, you don't have a rate or anything like that. It's up to you. You make as much money as you can do. I wasted 2 hours last night on DDR5 timings. That's not even the warm-up phase. It's the voltages. Because every chip, motherboard, and RAM stick, and I'm not talking about like series, like your specific ones are going to be different than everybody else's. You got to find the magic spots and give you kind of the easiest sort of starting point, and then you can kind of go from there. 1.4 volt VDD, 1.4 volt VDDQ on the RAM, 1.3 VCCSA, and then timings just, start with like your XMP or something. I would try to, I don't know, like you can just dick around from there, but that seems to work most of the time from my experience, but not all the time. For example, I got 64 gigs dual ranks in here. Will not go past 1.35 volts on the RAM. You go to 1.36, completely unstable. Will not work. Very strange. So start at 1.4. If it doesn't work, back down and go up. It's annoying. It's a lot of trial and error, and the really annoying part is you have to test for like 3 hours at least per configuration before you're like, okay, this is pretty good. Let me move on. You can't just do like a 30-minute sort of test because it'll take hours for them to fail because it's so heat sensitive. So you got to wait till they get really, really hot and cooking. I don't like DDR5. If you haven't noticed, boys, I don't really care for it. I'd rather just stick with DDR4 or 3. DDR3 is wonderful. It's like tuning B-die. It's fantastic. I love DDR3. DDR4 or DDR5, the hell with that. Thanks for the business building advice. Yeah, 100%. Not that hard. You find a need, fill it. And always have a side hustle. That's the other thing. Always be making money outside of your job. Do not expect to walk into work every day unless you own it. Even then, COVID could happen and then your job's gone. So always expect your job to be gone at any time. So always have a plan B. Even if it's something you do for like 5 hours a month, just a little something, something. Isn't that slower than buying DDR4? No, not with dual rank. If you get dual rank, well, 6400 might be, but you're still looking at 64 gigs of RAM versus 32. So even if you're 5% slower, you still have double the RAM. And in newer games, the DDR5 will actually pull it up. Latency heavy games, yes, DDR4 will still be better. So for your CODs, DDR4 will be better. Ivan's just paranoid, probably. I don't know what he's paranoid about. Ivan's the only person that's going to get 8,000 on the regular because, like I said, he's got a large enough sample size to where. Remember how I just kind of gave you my start off point? His start off point's going to be more accurate than mine, so that's going to save him a shit ton of time. Now, granted, that requires very specific motherboard, very specific RAM, and very specific CPUs, but still. Mine kind of works with any Raptor Lakes, at least. You should be okay. Starting there. Back when DDR5 launched, remember Billzoy being frustrated with tuning DDR5. Yeah, it sucks. And I was like, I'm not buying that if he's the guy who actually knows. Yeah, see, like he likes doing the AMD platforms because they seem to be a little bit easier. My guess is we'll probably get easier with on Intel when they don't have the dual IMC. I have a feeling that's probably why it's so quirky, is the DDR4 and DDR5. So, because yeah, it seems like the AMD one's just easier, but then you're dealing with AMD stuff. Or if AI could help with subtimings. I don't know, maybe. Got mad at DDR5, turned on Expo and went to bed. Your Expo itself might not even work. That's how crappy DDR5 is. Expo or XMP may not work. Some people say your money should be working for you. What does that mean? Well, that means if you, number one, this is assuming you have money. And when I say have money, we're talking 5 digits plus cash sitting around. More likely like 6 digits plus. So if you have $100,000 or more sitting around, you don't just like put it under your mattress. You got like 3 or 4 grand. That's not enough. It doesn't matter. And if you have less than 3 or 4 grand, you're not even a part of this conversation. You need to get to the point where you have $3,000 or $4,000 just laying around at any given time. That's just life advice. If you don't have $3,000 or $4,000 just at any given time, somewhere is laying around your house or in your bank account, get there. That's more important than computer crap and games and all the rest of that stuff. you don't have enough money for existing without having immediate access to that level of money. But once you're at that point, then you start building up. Now you got $10,000, $20,000 just laying around. This is when you're doing pretty good in life, right? Now, what you don't just let that sit around because it's losing money every second. That dollar, all right, I don't have any cash right in front of me, but if you had a dollar right here, every day that sits there, it's worth less and less and less and less and less. In 10 years, that thing's worth significantly less than it is today. You're better off taking that dollar and buying anything with it that you can get, because whatever that thing is going to be more valuable in 10 years than that dollar. So, what they mean by making your money work for you, mostly investment firms are the ones that are going to say this. They want you to give them your money so they can go play on the stock market. If they lose money, it's your money. But if they make money, you make money. Now, it's in their best interest not to lose your money, because then you take whatever money's, that's left of yours away from them, and then they can't play anymore. So, it's in their best interest to make you as much money as is possible. Now, there's a million different ways you can invest your money. You can do that. You can go to Joe Blow at Edward Jones and go, you know what? I don't want to do anything, and I'm just going to pray to God that you can make money for me. Okay, that's fantastic. Quite stupid, but fantastic. You can learn some stock market basics and do it yourself. That's a little bit better. There's plenty of people out there that'll teach you how to do your own investing. This way, you're hands-on. If you see the market shifting, you can pull your money out. You could throw it into something a little bit more secure. Me personally, I like hard assets. It's the value of a thing will never technically go down, except for like technology where it gets out of date. But like if you buy a shovel, that shovel is not going to be worth less in 10 years. It's going to be worth more. The best things that you could buy are like heavy equipment, things that you can rent out. Land's obviously great. Hard assets are what I personally prefer. You can even buy collectibles. Like if I find really good deals on graphics cards, like old graphics cards where, the price is kind of bottoming out, and I'm like, well, it's going to go up, I'll pick those up. Panicba, thank you so much for the 50 Canadian with the balls. Panicba's got the balls. With the half compete, Panicba, you'd go for the full compete. You get up on the board, buddy. I started the board. Guns are kind of silly, in my opinion, but yeah, I mean, they're kind of collectibles. People like to buy them. They're easy to trade and sell. So yeah, you can invest in that. I like things that also kind of make you money. Tools are great because you can just build things with tools. You can rent tools out. 3D printers are kind of a good one. You can make stuff. You can have people pay you to make things. That's kind of more small scale sort of stuff. But yeah, like just in putting your money into things. Sorry, this is taking a long time, but this is a really serious question for a lot of people out there that don't know. Put your money into something where you can actually do stuff and it appreciates in value. At least keeps up with inflation to a certain degree. So yeah, that's what they mean by that. Hashtag DDR4 for life, 100%. For the most part, I would kind of agree with that. These 4 gigs of RAM equal better 1% loads than 32. I don't think so. 32 is not going to be taxed out. It's just easier to tune in because the speeds are lower, and then with the dual rank, you get a little extra. Like a 6400 dual rank will be close to like a 7200 single rank, right? You get about a 10% bump there. So if you can get 7200 dual rank, you're going to be within spitting distance of 8000 single rank. So it's just a lot easier to tune in. And once again, you could use a 4DIMM motherboard, at least on the lower end of the spectrum. You can get cheaper motherboards too. And you get better cooling because the 4DIMM boards, you have that bigger space, more airflow, easier to cool. You don't need $100 RAM heatsinks. Passive income and investments. Yeah, that's passive income's kind of not a real thing. Because you could always lose money on that stuff. Food industry isn't going anywhere even when you start eating bugs. Yeah, I mean, you could start gardening. Like, I don't know. I like tools. I like tools. That's pretty good spot. You can invest in solar. Solar is pretty good. If where you live, you can feed into the grid and make money that way. Some places allow for that. There's just a lot of cool stuff that you can do. Don't plan on selling your guns. Washington State, for example, just banned normal mags and semi-auto rifles, so you can't sell your own property there. That sounds like something that just needs to be taken to the Supreme Court and get shot down. It's one of those like, no, sorry, you can't do that. Or once again, if you really have to sell them, you go across state lines. Or if things get really, really bad, nobody's gonna care about laws anyway. So there's that too. When everybody's clamoring for a gun, nobody's gonna care about the law. That's why they need the guns. I think that's where a lot of these people's thought process is. I buy a lot of guns if everybody needs guns. I have them. But I don't know. I have guns for me, and that's enough. Let's see, Danny's saying my favorite tool is my pressure washer. There you go. Cleans the deck, cleans the driveway, cleans the car. Yeah, I got a pressure washer. Pretty cool tool. We just got air pressure thing. So we got the nail guns and that sort of stuff. Thinking about getting a 60-inch deck, 0-turn lawnmower. I don't have a place for it yet, so we're gonna build the kids a fort and put like a shed underneath. So we're thinking about doing that. So I'll have room for that. And then what else do we need? I think that's really kind of the big one. But I also want to start buying some land. Like you can buy some cheap land. At least here, about 2 hours away for about $5,000, you can get about 3 or 4 acres. It's just woods basically, with nothing around it. But you can build it up. Property taxes is like $20 a year or something. It's super low because it's just raw land. Maybe put like a little cabin there. Maybe Airbnb it or something if somebody wants to get away. There's a lot of cool stuff you can do. Goal, thank you for the 20 Mexican pesos. He says, good old coins and NAF coins, best investment. Yes. That's something we should do. God coins. Yes, totally. That's going to be worth it in the future, guys. You'll be able to retire on your God coins. Please invest all your money here. Tools is a good one. So many benefits. Yeah, exactly. And everybody could use them. Right? Like anybody who's ever gone to like one of those tool rental places, which is most people, because who's gonna like buy their own backhoe and stuff like that? But sometimes you get something smaller. Like we rented a tiller for the garden that we put in. There's no need for me to have my own. I just go rent it once a year, till up the soil. But let's say you invest in the tiller, you use it for yourself once a year. But you put it on online or something for rentals, or rent it even just to your neighbors or something for $20 plus they put the gas in it or something. Pays for itself over time, and eventually turns a profit. And you have the tool that you need. Alrighty. So yeah, I'm kind of glad that this conversation took a turn there. I was kind of worried I was going to run out of tech stuff to talk about, which we did. But yeah, we got some pretty cool stuff in here. Some life lessons that I've learned. Hopefully, help some of you guys out. Maybe some of you guys will go out into the world and find a need that needs to be filled. Get that little side hustle going. Then you too can be like Pony and compete. And be like, hey, Chris, thanks for the advice. I can compete now. I have the $4,000 or $5,000 laying around the house. It's a beautiful thing when you have that level of security. It's really rough when you don't. So I would recommend everybody get to that point, and then you can start the side hustle. The best sort of side hustle is if you have everything you need to start going, 0 upfront investment cost. Great, start there. So try to keep it as little as possible, but I would say if you have to go up to like $5,000 to $10,000, I'd say that might be worth it for trying out. It's enough money where you can definitely do a thing, but it's also a little enough amount of money. If it fails, you're not destitute. So yeah, I wouldn't go any higher than that for definitely for a first try. But the cheaper you can go, the better. I want an excavator. Yeah, I could totally use one of those. See, Mats, if you had one and you live close enough, I would rent it off of you from time to time. 100%. Totally. Things are not cheap. Chris always makes me want to set goals. Good. Positive influence in your life. That's what I try to do. I've screwed up and done a lot of very stupid things, so you don't have to. I've bought a lot of crappy hardware and done a lot of stupid things, so you don't have to. It's the same thing, right? Learn from other people's mistakes. It's the most cost-effective way to learn things. But alrighty, guys, I'm going to wrap it up there. I want to thank everybody for joining me this Saturday. We had a wonderful time. Hope you guys have a great weekend. We will be doing Saturdays from now on for the live streams on this channel. I think I'm just going to leave them up on YouTube because I don't have any dedicated videos planned. I think we're going to probably start doing a lot more live streams. I didn't get into my thoughts for the future starting next year, but I think we'll talk about that next week. I've got a pretty cool idea of how to do this moving forward, where things won't get burnt out as much, right? Like, I think I got some cool ideas. We'll talk about it next week. But anyways, it'll be Saturdays. I'm not sure if this is the best time. I might try a little bit later in the day, see how that works out. Because we didn't get to the same amount of people that I normally have on the streams. Could just be because it's a new day, new time. I don't know. We'll finagle that. We'll figure it out. I'm thinking either 11 a.m. Central, which is what we did today, or 2 p.m. Central, because that's when my kids are usually napping. It'll be one of the two, but we'll stick with Saturdays and we'll just kind of figure out the times that make the most sense. I want to thank everybody for joining. Hope you guys have a great weekend. Once again, if you're not subscribed over to Techonomics, make sure you do so. Links are down below. And I'll be going live with Paul from Not an Apple Fan on Monday, which, by the way, Danny Z, if you're still here, I meant to talk to you if you can join. We'd love to have you on Monday. So, alrighty, guys, thank you so much. Hope you have a great day. I will catch you guys in the next video.